For those of you that are joining us, we are going to go ahead and get started. I'm Wendy from FamilySearch, and I'm just so excited to have you participate with us today. And please let us know where you're joining from. I'm actually downtown Salt Lake City. I look out my office window and I see the state capitol, and just west of me is Temple Square. And so it's really fun to be here joining you in your home. And John, look, this is John Huff. He's our guest today. This is so exciting. Okay, where are you calling in from?
Calling in from my house.
Yes.
I live in a little town in northern Utah called Honeyville. And yeah, Honeyville. It's, I don't know, like an hour north of Salt Lake or so. I can show you, if you look outside, you can see that that's what it looks like outside my window.
Yes, Honeyville. Oh my goodness. Okay, so what's interesting, and I could show you, but I'm not going to right now, but I'm surrounded by like skyscrapers, and I'm in a condo by apartments, and you're like space. You've got like space.
Yeah, it's true.
It's beautiful.
It is, yeah, we like it. We like it a lot.
Okay, let us know. We've got people from New Zealand and Mexico and Oregon and Canada. Florida. We're so happy that you guys are here, and make sure, let us know that you can hear and see us. And I'm just thrilled with the fact that John said yes to doing this. I'm going to let him introduce himself, but John is how long have you been at FamilySearch?
That's a great question. So it's a long time. I'm not sure. It would be
so long, you've lost track.
2020. So like 18 years, I think.
Wow.
17.
Oh my gosh.
I'm in my 18th year.
Okay. And I feel like I'm in my 18th year of quarantine. So
there you go.
It's week 8, what it feels like. Anyway, will you tell us a little bit about you and what you do for work, and more importantly, about your family?
Okay, about me, I have a beard, which
it looks great.
Yeah, a thing which I've never had before, but I've been at my house for like, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, and this happened and I didn't shave it off. So that's a thing about me that has not really existed before. That's fun. And I have 4 kids, 3 boys and a girl, and a wonderful wife, and live in Honeyville, and we got 4 pigs,
Did you say pigs?
Yeah, pigs. I said my daughter's raising pigs. So we've got 4 pigs and got 3 cats, and we've had chickens and goats and all kinds of things. So just living out on a little farm in the middle of Honeyville. It's really great. Love it. As far as work goes, I work on searching and hinting and matching and attaching records. So I work with all the teams that do that type of work. And my role, it's called product manager or experience manager. So I work to hopefully improve the experiences that our users have in those areas of our site. So search, match, and attaching, and source linker, if people know what source linker is, that kind of stuff. That's all the stuff that I work on. And I've actually just worked on that for the last year and a half or so. And a lot of people know Robert Kerr. He's fantastic. And he's done that for years and years. And so I have the hard chore of trying to keep moving forward with all this stuff.
Awesome. And we're excited to talk to you guys about that today. And I think what's fun is John is wanting to share some sort of insider user tips. So things that you may know, you may not know. So those of you that are beginners, if this is new to you, just know that this video will be archived, and we have helpers in the comments that if you have questions, they can answer them. And we want to say hi to our guests on YouTube. This is our first time on YouTube streaming. So John, you are the inaugural YouTube guest, and we're on the Facebook on the Family History Library page. And so thank you to those, and welcome to everybody there. And then our FamilySearch main page. So we are on 3 channels, and we think John has that much fun, cool stuff to share. And that's why we're all doing this here, to be with you guys during this quarantine time from our homes, downtown and farm, to wherever you are all over the world. So we appreciate you taking the time to be with us. And I think, is there anything else you want to tell us about your family before we jump in?
I don't know. I may have a son who's watching this, who's on a mission in Italy. he's on a mission in Italy. So he's been in his house for the last 2 months. So hi to Grant and his little housemates, his other missionaries are with him, if you are watching right now. And if you're watching later, this is for you specifically. So it's great to have this communication.
Yes. Oh, this is so great. So, okay, I think let's just jump right in and talk to us a little bit. Oh, I do have a question before we get started, because when we were talking in preparation for this, you talked about, so there's search, and then there's like, there's searching on the family tree, and then there's search. Like, how are those two search experiences different? Because what you are over is the search experience.
Yeah, so there are differences in how the types of records that you can look at. So when you go and do a quote unquote search at FamilySearch, people traditionally think that what they're searching for is historical records. So
Yes.
those are things that are like birth and death records, or census records, or marriage records. So when someone lives, they create a record, and that record gets captured. And then we go through the process. We have, thousands of cameras all over the world that take digital pictures of records, and then those records those digital pictures get sent into a central location, and then they get described as to what those things are, and they have some metadata, which means information sort of about that stuff that's attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you take that information, and then our wonderful, amazing, incredible indexers go through and they transcribe that information and help us create structured records out of them. And then those all get dumped into a big database, and then we search those as historical records. What people do with those historical records is they search for them, they find them, and then after they get those historical records, they can link them or attach them using a tool that we call SourceLinker to our family tree. And the family tree is a different area where you take evidence like you find in historical records, and then create profiles of people that say, oh, here's this person, and they were born on this date and in this place based off of this other evidence that I found in historical records. So you can actually search in historical records to find birth certificates and census records and those types of documents, or you can search through our tree, and then you can find people's conclusions about people who lived and all the information about them. You could think of it a little bit like if you're thinking of Wikipedia. If you went and searched for George Washington, you'd see George Washington page, you'd see a picture and a bunch of other stuff, and at the bottom you have all these sources listed. Well, historical records are all of those sources that you're going to search through to find that information to create that page about George Washington. That's
Okay,
kind of it.
That's a great explanation, and that's a great place to get started. So will you tell us about SourceLinker? Will you talk a little bit about what that is and what it does, and give us some like tips?
Yeah, sure. So with SourceLinker, I get, I'm not going to go to I was going to start sharing my screen because I tend to talk. I like to write on the board, even though you're not really doing anything. So SourceLinker, in the early days of attaching records, before we really knew how to do it, we would allow people to go and search for a record. And then what would happen is they'd find it, and then they'd have to look on one screen and look at it or print it out, and then type from that into the new one, into Family Tree to be able to transfer that information. So they could see it on the screen, and then they had to copy paste or retype or whatever to get all the information into the tree. And you had to do it for every single person individually, and it took a long time. So what happened is we had a bunch of people who were great, the teams that I work with now who were just brilliant, and they went out and they said, hey, how can we make this easier? And so they created a way for us to take the information that is on a historical record and all of the information from people that are on a record, and quickly and easily attach those all into the family tree and put that information in the tree.
Okay, this is I love knowing the backstory. And for those of you that might have questions, John will take some questions at the end. But please give your comments and let us know what you're thinking. Okay, so that explains where SourceLinker came from. Tell us some more.
Yeah, so for a while, we've made some things, there are things that are still hard about SourceLinker. It's not a perfect tool, but it's a great tool. I forgot I was going to say, we actually went from having somewhere on the order of 100 million sources in the system, that in all the time the system had existed without SourceLinker, to having well over 1 billion sources in the system just a few years after SourceLinker had come out. So
wow, so that's how effective it is.
That's right. It's super, super effective, but it still has its problems. And so maybe, can I show something as part of this?
Yes, we love it. Yes, our Facebook audience loves to follow along as you share. So go ahead and share your screen and talk us through things. I want to make sure that the pacing is good. And so if people have questions, we'll do our best to pay attention to that. Yeah, so John is going to talk us through SourceLinker. And I think this is great. This is,
I was going to talk about one specific thing about SourceLinker here, and that is here I just went and I just did a search, and if this is your ancestor, I guess they're famous now. I don't know this person, but I was just going to share this as a way to show it to people. This here is a tree person. So this is that Wikipedia page about George Washington that says, hey, here's information about this person. And then if you want to, over in this right-hand side, it says research help. And then you can see this little blue thing. And that blue thing, we call it a hint. It's telling you, hey, we think that this person on the tree might have something that you can attach to, a historical record that you could attach as evidence for this person. And so if you go ahead and click on that little thing right there, it gives you the chance to review that information, say, yeah, I'm comparing the stuff on the left to the stuff on the right, and that looks like the same person. I want to go and attach that information. So then you could go in, and what it does is it takes the information from that record, and on the left-hand side over here, it puts that information from that record. So you can see the United States 1940 census, and then you can see this person's name, and then you can see other people who are on the record. So you can see that Mary Balling was there, as well as Russell Balling. So these are multiple people. In this particular case, Mary is the head of the household, and then you've got Edna, who's a daughter, and Russell, who's a son. And then we take that and we compare it to other information that exists in the family tree. And that's the right side of this. You can see there's a label up here that's family tree, the one over here that says United States Census. And so then you can easily add that information. And a big change that we recently made, and so if you aren't aware of this, hopefully you'll go, oh, I'm so glad they did that, is that when you're adding information, you can go in and now we actually allow you to standardize this information. So one of the big tricks around making things that you can search for them in the future is standardizing information and saying, that's really what I meant. And in the tree, we haven't been able to standardize all the things that we put into the tree before. And we started doing that at the end of the year last year. And then just a month or two ago, we made it so that you weren't able to change the values that came across. And now you can actually change the values here and edit the information that you're going to put in. So in the tree, for example, we tend not to put in the councilman district number 9 for Los Angeles. So you could reduce that down and you could say, hey, I just want that to be Los Angeles that I'm going to put in there. And then that gave us a chance to select a standard value, and you can select it. And now you're standardizing the information right from inside SourceLinker instead of having it go over to the tree. So that's a request that we've had for a long time.
That's awesome. And we've got Nancy who's saying this is so much easier to add census information to all family members. Great. And so lots of comments are noting this and appreciating this. So this is great.
And I do want to point out one other thing. This is a really great thing, particularly in the 1940 census, because in the 1940 census, you had residences in 1935 that they captured as part of the census. And up until we just made this change, when you did this, you always got this right here, same place added into your record in tree. And so now you can grab the same place that they were in 1940 and easily just drop it into your place here, and then you can standardize it. And now you actually have the real place they were in 1935 instead of just the word same place. So that's a great improvement as well. Something that people have also been asking for a long time.
Okay. So do you, I'm just asking this question. I didn't ask you beforehand. Do you have any idea how many people use SourceLinker on any given day or week or month?
How many people use SourceLinker on any given day or week or month? I don't know how many people use it probably, but what I can tell you is that we have about more than 600,000 records are attached today. Excuse me, I got a bunch of stuff in my throat. There's more than 600,000 records that are attached today using SourceLinker.
Oh, wow.
So it's a pretty big number.
That's a huge number, 600,000 records a day attached using SourceLinker.
That's right. And in our peak days, I mean, that's just the average. On our peak days, we'll have more than 1 million records attached using SourceLinker on any given day.
So another question for you, how many languages is this experience available in SourceLinker?
Great question. Currently, it's in 10 languages, and those are the standard languages that we have been in for several years as FamilySearch, but we're expanding that list out to 30 languages, or it might be 31 languages this year. So it will be a tremendous expansion in people being able to see it in their own language, which we know is a really beneficial thing.
Wow, I love that. Okay, we've got another question for you. And it has to do with the reason statement. And this is from Linda. What types, and let's see if this is something you want to answer. What types of things do you want to have put into the reason to attach source? Is putting like the 1940 census source enough of a reason, or do you want more details? Like, what are your thoughts on that? What would you recommend?
Right. Well, a lot of people tend to, and I'm going to say this, it's not what I would necessarily recommend. I know that a lot of people, they don't put a reason statement in because they're like, look, it's evident. It's very clear why I attached this. Why would you ever waste the time to put a reason statement in? And they tend to be doing a lot of genealogy, and they tend to skip putting the reason statement in. But I recommend to most people, if you're working with reason statements, that you would put in information that helps you understand why you put the attachment in there and who you attach. So any information, especially like if you're attaching to a person, I like to include person IDs. I like to include information from the record, things that help you understand if someone were to come to this and they weren't able to look at the same screen that you were looking at here, well, what would you put in this reason statement down here at the bottom to make sure that they can understand the context that help you make that decision? And I agree, lots of times you don't need a lot of context because it's really evident. But if there's any kind of question at all, you want to make sure that you include information from the record and information from the tree person to show why you made that decision.
Okay, I've got one more question. One more question for you. This is from Tammy, and she's on the Family History Library page, and she's asking, what do you do if the information isn't a complete match? What's your recommendation?
That's a great question. And I don't know how to answer it, because it's really situation dependent. So when you say, well, it's not a complete match, it's all about comparing records and understanding. So how similar is this name to that name, and what relationships exist? So if the year, for example, in this case, let's say that the name said Edner Balling, and it said Edna over here. Well, then the first thing I would do is I would go up to right here. Well, actually, I would go to right here, and I would view the image of the record. It will bring up the image, and then I can look and say, well, it said Edner, not Edna. So on here, is it Edner or Edna? And then maybe I would find out that it was actually transcribed incorrectly, so the information does match. Or I might look at it, whoops, I wanted to go back here. Or let's say that it did say Edner. Maybe the way she said it to the person who came in, the person who came and captured the information was wrong. But you still have the mom in place, and you still have the other son down here, Russell, in place, and they've got the same rough birth dates. Here you got 1915, 1916. You know that in censuses, lots of times people would say, oh, they just kind of average it because it happened every 10 years. And so you see in the data that people tend to gravitate to being born on 0 and 5 years. And so having it be off a year or two in the census is not unusual at all. So it's really just looking at what does the handprint of the overall record look like compared to the person in the tree. And when you look at all of the information, is this really a match? And at some point you could think of it, I like to think of it as a rubber band. And so you're kind of pulling it and stretching it. And at some point that rubber band's going to break and you're like, that's not the same person. But if you have a belief and there's evidence that really the body of evidence suggests these are the same people, then I would attach it. So that's my answer. I talk a lot. I'm sorry. I talk.
I think that's great. And I think I think it's important to note that there's a reason this experience is for humans, right? Because if it was easy and a machine could do it and they could say, oh, this is exactly right. But you as a human need to go in and, like you said, you need to look at the record or the image and think like, oh, it's a census. So the age, they might say he's 2, but he was actually going to be 3 that year, right? Like there's all these nuances, and there's no like, genealogy can be a science, but it involves critical thinking and decision making and using your brain, which is why people enjoy it, right?
Yeah, it's the great mystery.
Okay, so what else do you want to tell us? I feel like there was like some sort of sneak peek that you were going to talk about.
Oh,
Yeah, because that's why people watch this live, John, is they want to know the inside scoop. So let's give them something.
okay. So here's something that we can share with people. The number one request for SourceLinker for a very, very long time has been the ability to take information from the left side on the record and overwrite information that already exists on the tree, or to edit that information. So the big issue with that is that when we make changes on the tree, we want to be able to make that change in context of the record. So, or context of the person. So when I go in here and let's say I wanted to look at Edna Caroline Balling's birth date, I would go here and press edit. And when I do that edit, it shows me that there are 4 people who've contributed to this, and there are people who may be watching this person who are going to see the change. We show them that the reason why it says 1910 as their birth date is because from this United States Census in 1920 and this one in 1910, we have a birth date listed from there. And so it helps them make a decision about what change they want to make in context of the actual conclusion and the other sources that were used to make it. Whereas when you're in SourceLinker, you don't have that context. So if we just allow you to overwrite it, you're making a decision without seeing the other reasons why someone chose that birth date. So later this year, not now, but in the future, not this year, this year, we're going to make it so that when you click on something, like if I were to redo this, when you clicked on this, and if there was something over on the right, it would actually, when you press that button, it would bring up a card that looks similar to this and then allows you to apply that information and make the change in tree like that, just like you do in tree. And then it would then show up in the SourceLinker over here. And we have things that what it looks like, but I'm not going to show you yet because it's not ready to release. And I don't want anybody to think that it's ready yet, but it is coming. And I know that's the number one request and has been for a long, long time.
Oh, this is exciting. Thank you for giving our viewers just a little bit of a taste of what's coming. I think I would love for you to talk a little bit about hints, which is something else that you talked about your team doing. And before we move into that, can you give us some context for how many hints does what is a hint, and how many does FamilySearch send out like in a month? And how have they impacted Family Tree overall?
Okay, great question. So hints, once again, if well, I was going to talk about in that, but there's that little blue square that I showed that says, hey, here's this source that might be for your person. So what we do is we have this big like set of records. It's like we have a giant barrel of it, and then we dump it in, dump into this big mixing bowl. And then we have this big set of people over from our tree of these conclusions about people have made about these people exist. So here is George Washington's birth certificate and his death certificate and et cetera. And then over the other side, here's this thing where people said, this is who George Washington was and why. And then what we do is we look at the people in the tree. Oh, I got to have my hands in the screen. We look at the people in the tree, and then we look at the stuff in the records, and then we go and we run the machine and we compare them all together, and then we say, you know what, we think that this birth certificate goes to that person. That's what a hint is. And we actually do like 40 billion comparisons to generate the hints that we have. Like, it's a big number.
40 billion.
Yeah. So we take, so when you look, you say, 40 billion times we say, is this thing that thing? Nope. Is this thing that thing? Yep. So that's what we're doing essentially. And then we generate this list of hints, and out of that 40 billion, we only show you the very top listing of those things. We only show the best ones that we generated. And we show a few billion of those to people on the tree in those little blue boxes that they can click on, and then they can say, oh, that's a hint for me. So we only come up with a few billion hints out of the 40 billion comparisons.
Wow.
But that's what a hint is.
I love that. And then
I guess I should say, I was going to say one other thing, how often we produce them.
Yes.
It's not a thing when it's, we only start and generate new hints, I guess, to new record collections. It's a really big deal to take that many things and compare them together. And so we do that on a, like every 3-4 months or so, we refresh. So when a collection comes out, we actually don't generate a new one that gets published of new records. We don't really generate the hints for those records to people in the tree until we do another one of these big hinting releases. And that's every 3-4 months.
And how do people know that new hints have been generated? I mean, we send emails, right? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and usually the best way to see that hints have been generated is people are looking at their tree and they see hints tied to their people and they go, "Whoa, I got hints."
Yes.
And then in FamilySearch, when they log into the system up on the top right, they see hints listed for members of their family, or when they're looking at their a device, they can see tasks and they can see hints generated there, and they'll see these new hints that show up out of nowhere and they're like, "Oh, well, that's because we just did a big new hint release and now we've got a whole bunch of hints for you."
Oh, it's so exciting. Okay, so what else do you want to tell us about hints?
I want to tell you all of the things about hints.
Yes, good. This is so great.
Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to talk about all the things about hints.
Just the highlights, just the secrets.
Yes, no, but hints are really great. I was going to say one other thing, but now I forgot what it was. Maybe I took some notes.
I know one thing we wanted to talk about was the ability, what you're doing to improve hints, so we're seeing less duplicates.
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, in fact, that's a thing. I built a little slide presentation.
Oh, yeah.
Good memory. I built a little slide presentation about that. So let's jump over here and talk about hints. Because one of the big complaints that we've had about hints for quite a while now is that, unfortunately, we haven't been able to know, has that hint been acted on yet? So when you see a hint, you have the ability, and maybe I'll just share again.
Yeah, show us. Everyone loves seeing, especially as you're talking, I think it's really beneficial.
Okay, so we'll go here. Come on. There we go. Are you seeing my screen now?
Yep, I'm seeing display only and attached hints.
Okay, all right. So when we go and look at this person, you have the option when you click on the hint here, as well as in the source linker to do this, you have the ability to say review and attach, which is one way that you can resolve the hint by attaching this person or creating a link between that person in the tree and the record. And then you also have the ability to say not a match, which means stop showing this to me and to other people, and you want to dismiss hints. And you can think of that as we've resolved that hint. And so what we say is when someone takes an action on a hint, we say, well, is it attached or resolved? For a long time, we haven't really had the ability to, in real time, be able to tell you, well, this hint has been resolved or not. And so what happened is we kept showing in this list right here on the person hints that had already been attached by someone else because it was done just, a few minutes before them or, some other time, not that long ago. Or they had dismissed it. And so people were seeing hints in cases where it wasn't really great. And so we've made some changes, and this is where I'm going to just share a little PowerPoint presentation. I'm sorry that I'm sharing PowerPoint over.
No, I think our viewers love it, right? Like you guys love seeing what John is going through. I think this is exactly why we are all here together. So
okay, all right. I hope you like PowerPoint.
We love it. We like to learn from the person who's building this. So thank you.
So what we do now is we display only unattached hints. Is it oh, okay, there we go. For some reason it wasn't working. And so if you look over here, you've got that list of hints. And in this particular case, this guy's name is Frank Spencer. And you can see that right down there in the corner is listed the England and Wales Census 1881. And so we were showing, oh, here's the 1881 census. And if someone went and clicked on it, then they would actually get a screen that looked like this, where right in the center, you can see once something's attached, it turns green. You can see that Frank Spencer is already attached. And it's kind of annoying if you're on this screen to be like, hey, I'm going to go resolve this hint.
Yeah.
And then you get there and this is what you see.
You want to tidy it up. Yeah.
So we have made it so that we do not display those anymore. And it took a lot of work from a bunch of different teams behind the scenes to be able to make that happen. But we've recently made it so that doesn't happen anymore. You should see a lot less of those. And if somebody goes in and they've dismissed hints, which you can see here on the research page in the dismissed help section. Those hints aren't displayed either. So you're getting a much cleaner list in that set. We're also doing another thing in that set, which I think is really good. And that is we are displaying possible duplicates instead of displaying hints. Now, what do I mean by that? In this case, I've got this person right here. I've got this Petter Christensen, and you're seeing that there's no hint displaying here. And if I go and look at, he has a possible duplicate, Petter Christensen and 9ML3LRW. If I go look at that Petter Christensen, I can see that he also has a duplicate to that one I was just looking at, that LTX one. But neither one of them is showing a hint. And that's because they are possible duplicates of each other. And the better resolution is to resolve that possible duplicates first. What we used to do is we showed, as you can see right here, here's the top one, here's the bottom one. Those are the two different ones. We used to show, I'll move that screen so you can see it better. We used to show Petter Christensen here and Petter Christensen here, and then someone would go attach it here, and then they'd go attach it here. And then if someone did resolve the duplicate, you'd end up with duplicate sources on that person. But by doing the possible duplicates first, when you merge those records together, here we go. When you merge those records together, oh, they're done. Then we evaluate the new person and we show the hint if that new person is a good connection, or if that's a good hint for that new person. So we've reduced to the tune of 70–80% of those cases where people were really unhappy about what they were seeing in this list on the right by doing this real-time resolutions of our hints. And we're just really pleased about that.
Wow. Okay. How large is the team that you work with to pull all of this stuff off?
That's a great question. So I actually work with several teams. And one of the teams is like 10 people and another team is about, well, they're all about 10 people, you know, up to 10, a little more than 10. So there's around 30 people who are working on all these different aspects of searching and hinting and attaching that I work with. And then there are people from other parts of the organization who also help where we need help to be able to do these things. So it's a lot of people and they are fantastic. They do great work and they're brilliant. I've worked here for 18 years, but I worked other places before and I worked with a lot of smart people, and just, it's amazing the people that I get to work with on a daily basis. Their intelligence, their dedication, their desire, they're fantastic people doing a fantastic job. It's just a total pleasure and blessing in my life to be able to work with them and work on this project. It's fantastic.
So I think that's awesome. 30 people. I think it's really interesting to give context to how things happen on the back end to allow our patrons to execute on the experience, right? Yeah. And when you think about 40 billion hints going into that bucket or that barrel, and then the amount that actually come out, and then the amount that actually get viewed or attached, and how you're constantly improving and streamlining the process to allow people to prove that these people from the past lived, that has to be a pretty moving thing for you to be involved in. Like, how has working at FamilySearch sort of impacted or changed your life? And then we'll go back to the tech stuff, but I just want to ask that question.
That's a great question. I'm going to tell a short story.
Great.
Which I didn't expect that I was going to tell, but here we are. I'm a storyteller by nature. So when I was young, people encouraged me at times to be involved with family history. And I'm going to tell the short version of this story, even though most people believe I can't tell a short story. But I really thought, oh, I'm going to get involved in family history. I remember being in like the Boy Scouts, and they were doing the genealogy merit badge, and they gave me a pedigree chart. And I think I was 11, right? And I made an airplane out of it. And I like threw it and then crumpled up other kids, right? And then I got older and I don't remember what other happened. But I remember one visit that I made. I was like 17 or 18. I could drive. I was in Salt Lake and I thought, you know what? I should go to the family history library and learn some things about family history. So I walked in the library and made my way up to the second floor, I think, or something like that. I don't remember. And I was walking around and I pulled some books off the shelf because I had no concept of what family history was. And then I opened up one of the books and I was like, well, my ancestors aren't in there. And so then I just set it back on a cart somewhere. I'm sure the librarians were just like, oh, who did this? And I pulled off a few more books. And then I went and I sat down at a microphone reader. and someone had stepped away. I'm guessing they'd gone to the bathroom. And so I sat down and I was like, whoa, there's one right here. I don't know how to work this, but maybe my ancestor's on this film. So keep in mind that I'm young and not helpful. And so I sit down and I went and went all the way to the end of the film and then went and went all the way to the beginning. I'm like, I don't know what this is and I don't know where my ancestor is. So I just sort of moved it into the middle and then left. So I've always kind of figured that someone came back from the bathroom and they'd been looking for their ancestor and they're like, it's a miracle. I left and I went to the bathroom and I came back and now I finally found it. This is the greatest day of my life. So I'd never really thought that I would be involved in family history because it just wasn't connecting with me. But working at FamilySearch, and I'm not going to tell the story of how I ended up working here, but ending up coming to work for FamilySearch and working for FamilySearch has been one of the great privileges of my life. I have learned so much about myself and about my family and the importance of family that I would never have done. I would never have connected with my family in the way that I do now. Even in my daily interactions with my family, I am different because I have the opportunity to work on this project and be a part of this project. And I can't say enough how grateful I am and how lucky I am to be able to work in this and work on this project and work on with these teams and do this type of work to help other people to get those same types of blessings that I've been getting in my own life.
And if you think about, the day-to-day stuff that you do and the huge numbers that you deal in, when you boil it down to one person having an experience of discovering a record or attaching and learning something, like that's a beautiful moment to think that you and your team and everyone is facilitating this 600,000 times a day, right? Like, oh, yeah. That's powerful. And I would second the fact that it's a privilege to work at FamilySearch. It's a privilege for us, for John and I, to speak to each other and to people who are watching. And I think it's important for us to remember how much, family history has impacted personally, professionally, and those of you that are watching. And we'd love to hear from you. And so, John, thank you for that story. That was awesome. I think we want to go to one more sort of tip or technical stuff and talk a little bit about search basics. And one of the things you mentioned was so our search is set up differently than some other industry partner websites. And so can you say more about that?
Yeah, I absolutely can. So what people think when they search on a website, and maybe I'll share a little bit.
Yes, share.
I probably should have thought about this before. So this could be just a little bit of a disaster.
This is great. This is what we're here for.
Let's see here. Oops. If anybody wants to know, we have millions and millions of new hints in the 1850, 1860, and 1870 censuses. That's what I'm displaying on my screen right now. So if you have ancestors in those spaces, there's lots and lots of new hints because of some great work that our teams did, just FYI.
That's good. Give them a plug, go look at those guys.
Yeah, they're awesome. So when you're in FamilySearch, and let's just go and look at a search page here. And I'm going to just give a shout out. One of the, I think, moderators that we have right now is Debbie Gertler. And I just want to thank Debbie Gertler and the library folks and everyone, because I've only been working on the search team. I actually worked on the tree team for most of the time that I've been at FamilySearch and haven't really been involved in search at all until the last year and a half. And so I just want to thank Debbie Gertler and so many other experts at the library and other places in our organization, Robert Kerr and the teams themselves, in helping me come up to speed and really understand search better. And I use a phrase that Debbie gave me, less is more, all the time, because I think it's the best advice you can give anybody for our system. So thank you, Debbie, wherever you are, as our moderator. And if you ever get a chance, I don't know, maybe our moderators can throw this in the chat. You can throw a connection. If you want to know how to use search better on our site, Debbie does a fantastic presentation called I Didn't Know You Could Search Like, or I Didn't Know You Could Search Like That, I think is what it's called.
Okay.
Our help stuff. And you should watch that because that's how you're going to learn how to search on our system. So thank you.
Great tip. So moderators, add a link to that in the chats or in the comments. Okay. Yeah. So less is more.
Yeah, less is more. So what happens is people tend to, when they search, they tend to go in and say, oh, I want to look for, my great-great-grandfather or whatever, John Huff, we'll say his name is. And then they say, okay, and I want, I know that he was born in Ontario, Canada, and then they say, oh, and it was from 1791, or he was born in 1791, and his spouse's name was, I'm not sure, maybe it was Edna, and then they say, oh, and his death date, I forgot, we'll add something here. His death date was 1850. I should put it in the right place here. It is 1850, and he died in, we'll say he died in Utah. And then his father's name was Bill, and his mother's name was Nancy. And then his, all this kind of stuff, right? They go through and they list all of this information and lots of dates, etc. And then they say, oh, and I want the country to be the United States, only records from there. And they put in lots and lots of stuff. And then they go search. And then, oh, I forgot. I was going to say, and then another thing they tend to do is they tend to say, oh, let's put in, I know this stuff is all right. Everything about this is right. So I'm just going to make sure that everything is exact. That's what all these little exact buttons are. Mm-hmm. And so then they say, okay, do the search. And then what happens is they get no results. And they go, what? I told you exactly what I wanted and you couldn't find it. What's wrong with you?
And they're disappointed and frustrated.
That's right. In fact, what happens is, and this is the thing that I'd like to point out to people. If you look down right here in the bottom corner, you can see that little thing that says feedback right there. Mm-hmm. And we're happy to get feedback. In fact, when you click on this little button, it gives you a chance to tell us what you think of things. So you can say, I hate what's happening right now. And then you can say to us, I didn't find what I wanted to find, or whatever, you can type whatever. And people will send us messages and say, I didn't find what I wanted to find, and your site isn't any good. And they'll, how likely you recommend us? And they're like, I'm not very likely because you guys are miserable. And then we want them to add in email addresses so they can go in and add in their email address, et cetera. And then we get those messages and we look at them. And oftentimes what they've done is they've put in tons and tons they've checked all the exact boxes and put in lots of information. When in reality, usually the best way to search, and I'm just going to go ahead and reset this really fast.
Yeah, this is great insider info, by the way, John. This is fantastic.
Yeah, the best way to search is usually to start with, I keep having Enoch Erastus because he's the first person I ever searched with on this, is to search with just a name. And Enoch Erastus is really unique. So we're going to find results right at the top. But in the case of Enoch Erastus, oh, it's not. Enoch Erastus, there we go. In the case of Enoch Erastus, you're going to see, oh, here's Enoch Erastus, and then he is over and over again because his name is really unique. But the thing is that starting with a name is often the best way to do it. And then you can find if they're unique, their record. And then the less unique they are as a person. So if their name is John Smith, you're going to have to put in more information. But if they are unique, start with as little as possible. And then if you don't find them, then add in the birth information. And you can say, oh, I want to find 1862. Okay, so then once you put that little bit of information in, then it starts honing in and saying, okay, now we're finding all of the ones with births in 1862. And then you can say, well, I also want ones where they have a spouse. And in this case, I want the spouse's name to be Josephine. And so you'll notice that as we're typing in these things, we're actually reducing the number of results that we're bringing you. And the reason why is because if you put something in, I call it conflicting data, but if you put in conflicting data, we won't return it. Like, for example, right here, I've got Enoch Erastus Huff, and then I've got down here Josephine, but, and you'll see that he was born in 1862, right? Well, this record right here, if I change this birth date to be 1920, you might think because it says Enoch Erastus Huff, and Josephine is the spouse, and Josephine is the spouse here, that we would say, well, it's got enough that we're going to show it to you. But because the birth date conflicts with the birth date right there, that record is going to disappear. You watch. And that's because we remove information or hide information when there is conflicting data.
Okay.
And so in this case, Enoch H. Huff showed up and Erastus Huff showed up, and they showed up because there's no birth or death information in here. But if there had been a birth date of 1920 or 1862, like there was, well, those disappear. Now, if I take this out, you watch, those records are going to come back. Here we go. See, now I've got that Enoch Erastus just because I removed the birth date. So what I'm trying to say is that using exact and using all of the information works super well on other family history sites, but on FamilySearch, the way that our search is designed and works, you actually start with less and then you add a little bit and then find out what you get, and then you narrow. And then you can use the filters. Some of you probably haven't used those before, down at the bottom to do other filtering to say, oh, hey, I want just the birthplace to be United States. And I want the birth range to be, let's go down here again, the birth range to be in the 1800s. And so you can use that type of information to really narrow down your information from that.
Okay,
So
I think
less is more.
Less is more. That's fantastic. And there was something that we talked about, and it was something in if you have two kids with common names, and they're this is not a way you can search on the tree yet, but you can search within search.
Yeah, so that's something that we recently released and a lot of people aren't aware of. So thanks for bringing that up. I should have brought it up. And that is that we've made it so that, you know, it used to be that when you're on search and you wanted to do a search, that you pressed spouse and that was it. You could search for one spouse, but you can now search for two spouses. So you just press it twice, or you can search for two fathers or two mothers or two other persons. You can fill in all those information. Now, this type of search will be better for handprint searching on the tree, but we don't have that yet. So right now, it's most effective for finding what I've found is where you would see these types of relationships. So searching for marriages, this isn't going to work very well in historical records because a marriage record probably didn't have that person plus their old spouse and their new spouse that were listed on the marriage record most of the time, right? And so spouse searching probably isn't very effective. But if we wanted to say, like, I'm going to go with Enoch Erastus again, let's say there's Huff, and then he had two kids. And for those of you who don't know, the way that you search for kids on FamilySearch currently is you search in the other person's names, because that's where the kid information is actually shared. We only have spouse, father, mother. We don't have children. So if you want children, you have to search in the other person's. So my grandfather's name was Owen. And then I know that he had a sister, his oldest, I think it was his oldest sister, named Zina. So if I go in and put in, you know, Huff as a last name, and then I can put in Owen and Zina, and then just do a search. Well, that's going to bring back records for me that have Owen. If you look over here in these other records, right there, there's Owen, and there's Zina, and there's Zina, and there's Owen, and there's Zina and Owen. So it's actually bringing back two people from those records. So it gives you just a little bit better chance to be able to pull back the specific people you're looking at. And you'll notice that I got them in the 1900 census here. And these are the different kids from the 1900 census for Enoch Erastus. And then down here, you can see it's pulling in obituaries, because at obituaries, you often have names of children and secondary spouses and all that sort of stuff. So that's why these tend to be good searches for obituaries and for censuses. So anyway, new functionality, ability. And over time, we'll get to where you can have more children, but anything that you see on our site is really just a tiny tip. It's just the tip of the iceberg of all the work that has to happen to make something available. And so it's going to take us some time to get to where we can handle doing lots of kids searches all at the same time. Yeah. So right now it's just two.
I love that. I feel like you have really shared some things that probably not a lot of people have known. And it's great to read the comments, and we appreciate our moderators. We have just a couple of questions. If you're okay, like, are you okay to take a few questions?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for my daughter's cookies to cool off so I can go eat them. So I'm good.
I'm jealous. Okay. This is from Kathy. She wants to know, how important is it to standardize the dates and place names on the records?
So I don't know if she's talking about when she says records, if she's talking about indexing and historical records, or she's talking about tree. So maybe I'll talk to both. Because it doesn't matter that much. It's great to standardize on both, because what standardized places are what make it so that we can search for stuff. So if you want people to find that record, then standardizing it is really important, whether you're searching in the tree or whether you're searching in historical records. So yes, standardization is very important. And we can still sometimes find it if it automatically standardizes. What I mean by that is, if you go and look at a place that isn't standardized, if it's still recognizable, and when we do a search, we actually standardize it if it's not standardized, to just say, well, can we find one that maybe we can bring back to them? But if you want to make sure that it's searchable, then standardizing is very important.
Okay, we have another question. This is from Rita. and this is going to be good. She wants to know what like are some of the records which do not show up as hints.
So some of the records do not show up as hints. That's a really great question.
Mhm.
Some things don't hint, some records don't hint particularly well. The biggest culprit of that that we have on the site is Social Security death records and what's the other one? And the US public records collections. So there's lots of living people and they're in those record collections. People are in those record collections lots of times and they tend to have names and sometimes a date or whatever, but not a lot of information. And it's hard to match against those. And so if we match with those and then present hints to people like that, then we get lots of bad attaches in the tree and it causes a lot of problems. So
Okay.
we don't tend to hint on those types of records, and we don't hint on any living records for other people. We only hint on living records for you in your, in tree, you have a little living private space and we'll hint there living, but nowhere else for living.
Okay. Super, super good question. Great answer. Okay. Daniel is asking, this is a good one. What is FamilySearch doing to ensure research quality? We often see people attaching incorrect hints or adding incorrect individuals to families. Yeah. And this is something that is everyone's aware of, right? So how would you answer that?
Well, we're trying a bunch of different, we're testing different ways that we can slow people up, help them know that they're making bad choices, not bad choices, but that they need to pay closer attention to the decision, that they need to do a better compare. And we're looking for how we can expose, like in the source linker, we want to start exposing that the information that they're seeing is different than the information that they're choosing to attach to. So we have a visual indicator on the screen. These are different things. So you need to be really careful before you attach, and putting warning labels in place when they're going to make a decision that looks like it's not a good decision. So we tend to use the word impedance, which is, I guess, a physics or chemistry term, something, where it means that we're trying to put something in the way to slow people down and make them think about their decisions before they make those choices. But we're trying a bunch of different things. There will be multiple things coming out this year on the tree side, and I can't tell you the timing on the source linker side, but
you're working on it.
Yeah, we're working on it to try and improve that whole process of helping people understand how to make good comparisons and make good decisions about whether or not they should attach a record and make changes to people on the tree.
Oh, wow. Okay. Like, you've covered so many great topics. I want to ask you, like, so we've talked about source linker, we've talked about hints, we've talked about, search, and you've shared a personal story, told us about your family, which I feel like is just great to get to know you. I want to know, is there anything else you want to add and tell people as we wrap up today's live stream, as they're working on their own family history at home? What words of encouragement or advice would you like to give them?
One thing I would say is keep going. We know it's not perfect.
Yes.
And we're trying to get better. And with your suggestions and help, we are getting better, I think. We're better than we were a year ago, and I know we're better than we were 5 or 10 years ago, and we keep getting better. And so keep working, keep trying. We're so grateful for all the work you're doing, and we're going to keep working and trying and making the experience better for you. We spend, as an organization, we put a tremendous amount of resources into trying to make the site better and to make lots of things better. And we're constantly trying to improve the way that we're doing hints and the way that we're doing searching and et cetera, and those types of things. Another thing that I didn't tell you about that we're going to come out fairly soon with is the ability, when you search from the tree, we'll search based off of the maiden name and the married name, instead of just searching off of the maiden name. So so that we'll get better results there. So we're always looking to make things better. And so keep communicating with us, keep sharing us how you think we could be better, and we'll keep working to become better. And we're grateful that we're all working together on this great, fantastic project. It's just, we're so grateful for all those who are willing to participate in this process, and grateful for all the work that you do, from our volunteers on indexing to all those who contribute to the tree, and to all those who consume and look at sources based off of our historical record search. We're just really happy to be part of this whole process.
Thank you. I think that is a great way to end out our our stream today. And I would echo what John said, and thank you for participating on the tree and searching, and thank you for joining us today. We appreciate connecting with you all over the world, and from Honeyville to downtown Salt Lake to like so many places. So thank you, and join us next week. We'll be back on Facebook at the same time, and we'll have Amber Larson, who is a Wiki expert, and she's going to talk all about the Wiki, which, John, do you have any idea how many Wiki pages we have on FamilySearch? This is an answer, I know, an estimate, so I'm going to see if you know.
Oh yeah, I totally know. I believe it's 430 billion is the number,
No,
I believe.
it's like 92,000 or something.
Oh.
Wiki research pages. And anyway, okay, guys, this was super fun. And John, thank you so much again for joining us. And where can people go to learn more about search? You mentioned Debbie Gertler's class, and then if they have suggestions, I thought that was great that you showed them the feedback button, but what would you recommend they do?
Honestly, I would recommend that they go watch Debbie Gertler's class.
Okay.
And another thing is just playing around with the system helps you learn how to use it better. So if things aren't working, sometimes I have to search a few times to be able to find a record, and then I learn, oh, that's the way that this is working. And so playing around with it can really improve your results. There's another search. If you aren't finding the records just using our basic search system, there's another presentation out there called Finding Elusive Records that Robert Kerr put together. Yes. I don't know if we have moderators who could throw a link to that in the chat, but
yes, we have it on YouTube. So yes, we can link that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Finding Elusive Records, that helps you when you aren't finding the records because they haven't been indexed and transcribed. They're just images in our system. And so both of those presentations are a great next step to how do I raise my game in doing searching. Thanks to Debbie and Robert for putting those things together, because they're just both fantastic, and they're fantastic presentations. And I think that's how you move forward. If you're like, what do I do next? That's
awesome.
How you go.
And I like how you said, don't give up, just keep trying. And we're going to say that for surviving the quarantine, friends. Don't give up. Just keep trying. Come hang out with us. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you. It's been a delight. I've loved it.